Welcome to the SENCast. My name is Dale Pickles, I'm the host of the SENCast, and I'm also the Managing Director of B Squared. If you are a new listener, then welcome to the SENCast. The aim of the podcast is simple. We want to reach lots and lots of people and help everyone learn more about special education needs and disability. In this episode, we discussed why every school needs a SENCO on their senior leadership team. And I was joined in this conversation by Lisa Pinkerton, the Head of Education at Widgit Software. Lisa is a former primary school teacher and deputy head, and Lisa's passion lies in developing personalised learning journeys to meet the specific needs of children with SEND. Lisa's firm belief is that if we consider all potential barriers at the point of planning, we can give pupils a toolkit of support that enable them to fully access the curriculum and feel truly included. The SENCast is created by us here at B Squared, and EverSense is our evidence of learning and parental communication system. It feels like social media, so it is extremely easy to understand and use for staff and parents. But it is extremely secure. It's a safe place to share evidence of learning, whether it's photos or videos, with parents or external professionals. It's a great way to capture pupil voice or use as your homeschool diary. Visit the B Square website to find out more about EverSense, or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through EverSense and what it can do for you. Now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest this week is Lisa Pinkerton, the Head of Education at Widgit Software. Lisa is a former primary school teacher and deputy head, and Lisa's passion lies in developing personalised learning journeys to meet the specific needs of children with SEND. Lisa's firm belief is that if we consider all potential barriers at the point of planning, we can give pupils a toolkit of support that enable them to fully access the curriculum and feel truly included. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you, Dale. Nice to be here.
You are welcome, and I'm loving the background.
Of course.
That widgety.
Very widgety. I wouldn't be without it.
So the SENCO is a crucial role in schools, but it's never really given the status it deserves. And it has been a recommendation for years that the SENCO should be on the senior leadership team. But it is still just that, a recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, but I think I'm cautiously optimistic about the direction of travel, if I'm honest. When you look at the white paper, the proposed reforms, when you bring into account as well the Ofsted inspection framework and everything else, it's pretty clear that inclusion belongs to everyone, I think, in everything, not, all stakeholders in a school. Not that I'm a fan of that word, but teachers, teaching assistants, senior leaders, governors. And if an inclusion strategy depends solely on a SENCO in a school, that's just not sustainable. And also, it's not possible because they need to be able to lead and coach and influence and help to develop others. And that can't just be done as a bolt-on. That has to be done as an integral part of the whole strategy of the school.
Definitely. One of the things I really like, and you've said the Ofsted word already, so we can go...
I'm sorry, I can only apologise.
I have a problem with Ofsted, but there's a whole conversation around that. But one of the things with the new Ofsted inspection framework I really like is it really makes it clear that the SEND isn't just the responsibility of the SENCO. Mm-hmm. It is the responsibility of every single leader. And I did have Ofsted on. It was kind of, if your school fails their inspection, well, I think it's fail is not the correct term anymore, due to SEND, it's probably not the SENCO's fault. It's the other leaders not picking up their aspects of SEND and dropping the ball there. So if you are a SENCO and maybe your Ofsted doesn't go too well, I guarantee it's not your fault. It's, as you said, the influence, that strategic leader, the direction of the school, that's the barrier.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the Ofsted framework, it doesn't explicitly state that the SENCO should be on the senior leadership team, but it does say very clearly that through their leadership status within the school, they should be there to lead and drive whole school improvement for SEND and have whole school oversight and strategic authority. You know, gone are the days where you've got a SENCO pulling out groups of children as a bolt-on. I mean, a SENCO working in that way is great for individual pupils, but a SENCO with strategic influence can transform the experience of every single child in the school. And I think, quite rightly, as you said, it is the responsibility of everybody, and that has to be steered by the leadership team. I teach on the Best Practice Network NPQ SENCO course, and one of the most useful activities we do right at the beginning is that we write down every single stakeholder of a school. I said that word again. We write down every single stakeholder in a school, and all of the candidates then have to draw a circle around everybody, indicating their circle of influence or their perceived circle of influence. So it's really interesting to see how the SENCOs, what size circle they draw around themselves. The bigger the circle, the wider your circle of influence. Inevitably, the head teacher often comes out with a very wide, big circle, and often the SENCOs don't necessarily see themselves as having that wider circle of influence. But I would argue sitting your SENCO alongside your head teacher or part of that strategic leadership team just widens that influence and just makes that conversation about inclusion the heart of every conversation that happens in school.
It's interesting, that circle of influence, and that saying the SENCOs don't feel they have that influence. They probably don't. And that how big that circle is not really defined by the SENCO. It is defined by the head teacher and how much they lead SEND, or how inclusive they are. How, if the SENCO leads, they just walk out the room because they're not interested because they've got something else more important. It's, are they saying the same message as the SENCO? Are they backing up the SENCO? Are they starting things, saying we're going to do this, and then the SENCO maybe gives the detail rather than to me, that's the sort of thing which helps everyone see how important the SENCO role is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the national picture currently, you know, I think it was the National SENCO Workforce Survey in 2021 said that 2/3 of SENCOs were not on the senior leadership team. More recently, Sensible SENCO said it's improved. You know, 50% of the people in their survey were on the senior leadership team. However, they don't necessarily feel that they're part of the strategic thinking. And without that place, the ability to change is limited. From a head teacher's perspective, I've been in quite a unique position, actually, because at one time I was a head teacher and a SENCO at the same time, with an acting head teacher, which I had to have some quite interesting conversations with myself. But it put me in a unique position to really understand, you know, head teachers are pulled in so many different directions. You know, they have the responsibilities of, you know, attendance, data. I'll come back to data shortly. But all of the demands from all of the other people involved in the school, the governors, the promotion of the school these days, the publicity, all of those things pull you in different directions. And I can understand that sometimes having an effective SENCO, having an effective SEND strategy might not, to some head teachers, not all, the majority of head teachers I've met are very, very inclusive, but to some it might not be that attractive because their perception might be that the better their SEND strategy, the more pupils with additional needs they're going to attract, and then the impact on the data and everything else that could happen. But I really firmly believe that if you are planning for inclusion at the outset, you get the curb cut effect. You know, you lower the curb for everybody. You make something accessible and valuable for everybody. My daughter went to a school that had a high percentage of SEND pupils, a very high percentage of SEND pupils, and had a reputation for being great with pupils with additional needs. And I think having a daughter who's neurotypical, quite academically capable, a lot of people were quite surprised, given my background, that I sent her to that school. But my argument would be a school that is good at meeting children where they are at and addressing their individual needs and supporting them to make progress from their starting points. Well, that means that's going to impact every single child, you know, and they did. They met my daughter's needs amazingly well. And better still, she became a more rounded human being because of it, because she got an appreciation of the different things that different people need to help them.
And that's the thing is there's lots of talk about with the white paper, this push for inclusion in mainstream settings.
Mm.
And then there'll be lots of parents going, my child couldn't cope in mainstream. And what you've just highlighted there is there are very different types of mainstream. There are mainstream schools where you have to fit the mold. They want those high achievers. It's about the results and so on. And you need to fit in here. And there are other schools which are often those magnet schools for those SEND pupils, help every child to achieve, and not just academically, but as you said, your daughter became well-rounded.
Yeah.
In all those softer skills, that understanding that everyone's different, that everyone has their own skills and their own, what they bring to the table, you might not initially see. But actually, you realize over time, actually, what that person does bring, but you only get that through experience.
Absolutely. And all those things, surely, are those skills that we're going to need in the workplace. You know, you need to go into a workplace where you have an appreciation that everybody might approach things and tackle things in a slightly different way. And how are you ever going to learn that if you are a very sort of single-minded, you've come from a school that's got a very single-minded curriculum that only really values one style of learning, that only really values one approach? How do you learn that everybody approaches things in different ways?
And I also think that so my autistic daughter's has gone from secondary school, which was pretty much you have to fit in, and she was getting, I think her grades were between 5 and 7, I think. So she got everything she needed to continue on her studies. She may have got an 8, I can't remember. She's then moved to college where it's more independent skills. What's asked of her is different. And she's doing, to me, 3 horrible subjects, which are psychology, sociology, and history. So much reading, so much writing. Just my idea of hell. But she is absolutely thriving because she has that freedom. But I think partly because I think she didn't necessarily fit in well with how she was expected to do things at school, she had to find a way that works for her. And I do worry when you have these schools which kind of put this conveyor belt system in and you come out the other side, it's, do you know what you can do? Do you know how to do things? Or has the school just fed it to you on a plate to pass your GCSEs and now what? And I think that secondary school is getting the grades is obviously important for the next steps in your life and things like that. But those other skills about how you learn, your metacognition, your executive function, all these other skills that you need are often not necessarily supported or helped to thrive. And it's really, it's going back to it always, you said with a head teacher, you have to find a balance with all your stakeholders and work out where you are, where you're going. And it isn't just a case of you can just say, we're going to do this. You've got to get the buy-in from so many people. It's a really tough job.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And I think, if I'm honest, I think if we truly want the intentions of the SEND reforms to work effectively, the whole curriculum will need careful rethinking, a complete overhaul. I know curriculum reforms are in progress, but I think we're so focused within our national curriculum on content. Now, my background's early years. I have a master's in early years. I spent many, many years teaching in early years, because once you're in early years, you're really thinking about child development and best practice, and again, meeting children where they're at and figuring out their next steps in their learning. But also the focus is so much on about how we learn. You know, the characteristics of effective learning underpin everything in early years. So that's about, how do we problem solve? How do we ask questions? How do we socialize? How do we, all those skills which, are going to be really important in the future. Content, well, I've been very well behaved and put my phone elsewhere, but that's unusual. Normally my phone is to hand, and I can find information at the tip of a finger, at the tap of a finger. I need to be able to evaluate that information. I need to be able to think about what I'm reading, why I'm reading it, and also how to have debates and discussions about what I found, effectively. So I need to appreciate how other people may have interpreted that information and why, where they come that makes them think this way, or why are they thinking in that way. All of those skills, the metacognitive processes that you talked about earlier, how do I learn? What works best for me? We don't teach enough of those skills in school. And I'm going to sit here now from Widgit and say about visuals. Of course I am. I'm not going to not mention the importance of visuals. But I would love to be in a position where they're part of a toolkit. A child in a school will be able to say, I think having visuals to support me with this will really help me. I would like to see environments where we're thinking about that. We're planning those inclusive practices from the outset. So we're giving people different strategies and different options from day one, so that they learn what makes them the most effective learner. And yes, that's a real challenge for head teachers, because it's very hard to break a mould, particularly when you've got a lot of pressure from parents who learned in a particular way, are used to particular learning style, used to particular approaches to behaviour management and things, for example, which isn't necessarily thinking about intrinsically motivating factors for behaviour. It might be more about the old-fashioned sort of extrinsic motivator. I could go down that wormhole, but I won't. But the head teachers are up against it. They have to be thinking in a different way. In the years ahead, I'd really hope that the most successful school leaders are those that aren't thinking about inclusion as something that's competing with this or competing with school improvement and outcomes, but essential to it. Because as I said, when you're thinking about the best ways that someone learns, or giving people the opportunity to find out about how they are as a learner, then that just becomes part of excellent teaching, doesn't it? So the outcomes will come.
Definitely. There is a video of a bloke talking about somebody who wanted to run a certain time and his student, and she went, I want to beat this person or this. I don't know if you've seen this video with my really random bad description. But she was saying, I want to beat this person. And he kind of saying it's not about beating that person. It's about improving yourself. Mm. And I think when schools are using like number of nines or SAT scores as that metric, the starting point has to be high for children to achieve that. And if you're saying, I want to run a marathon in X number of hours, but you set your personal best but don't quite achieve it, have you failed? And if you haven't kind of got that 9 or whatever, then it's a fail. But it's like, how far have you come? That progress from starting point, which I'm really loving seeing in the new offset inspection framework, is so important, because there are some children who arrive in early years reading because their parents are fully there doing all the stuff they have to do, blah, 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 blah. Then there are some children who aren't, for various reasons, that are either unconscious, no choice, whatever the reasons. And actually, if we measure the progress from that child to where they get to, and another, they do amazing, but because they're not getting those high grades, because that's the sort of thing that with the new inspection framework, I'm really hoping people sit there and go, it's not the line we get to. We're not trying to draw a set line in the stand. It's, can every person make X amount of progress from wherever they are? Because if they're doing that, that's phenomenal. And I think that change in thought process, as you said, changes from actually we want the best to, and it's not about dropping your standards. It's just changing how you measure it and helping every child to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think unfortunately, when we're still in a position where schools are judged against one another based on their outcomes, that's a very difficult mold to break. I would love, the ideal, and I do feel there is a direction to travel here. I keep saying cautiously optimistic, because I don't want to undermine all of the other things that come alongside all the reforms, and particularly the white paper reforms. But I am cautiously optimistic because I think this conversation is now happening. And, I think people are moving away from a one-size-fits-all and thinking about universal provision, for example, at the outset. But also, as you said, moving away from, I would love to get to a point where we're moving away from saying, right, this school is excellent because it got, X percentage of children reaching the greater depth standard or expected standard or whatever it may be. And instead moving towards a system where they're saying, actually, they move children on from this point to this point. And isn't that amazing? But better still, I would love to reach a stage where we're actually just being judged on how inclusive we are. This school, I know it's woven throughout the Ofsted framework, so it's there. But wouldn't it be great if that's the way that schools were judged, so that parents could look at schools and say, oh, this is a school where all children thrive. And it's a school where all children thrive because at leadership level, there's a strategic plan where children are not just seen as a group of people, but they're seen as individuals. And SENCOs are not just seen as people who deal with SEND and it's over there, but actually as its strategic partners thinking, how can we accommodate everybody so that everybody can thrive?
Definitely. And now bringing it back to SEND, and you mentioned the Ofsted inspection framework and that it doesn't say that the SENCO should be on the senior leadership team. I've been literally been recommending, and there is to achieve the whatever there is replacement for good. I can't remember the third value, whatever it is. It's kind of got in there to achieve this level. The SENCO needs to have the right level of authority.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's that phrase is to me like, boom, that's the phrase. Now we have, not they should be on, but actually it on the senior leadership, it's saying the SENCO needs the correct level of authority to make a strategic difference around inclusion in this school.
Absolutely. I think, to be really dull and quote it, I think it says a qualified SENCO is empowered through their leadership status to lead whole school improvement, something for pupils with SEND. So having that whole school strategic oversight and that strategic authority. And pleasingly, I'm delivering on the MPQ SENCO course, and that is very much the message coming through in the training for the MPQ, for the SENCOs in their training as well. It's not just about, even looking at a case study about an individual child, they're not just there thinking about that child, but thinking about, okay, how can I put some training in place to meet the needs of this individual child that will have an impact on the whole school in the future and will empower my staff in terms of what they can offer for SEND in general. So looking from a much more strategic angle.
What I like about that phrase, and well done for remembering it so well.
Well, roughly, don't quote me on it, it's about there.
It's really quite a clear message. A head teacher should be able to look at the school and go, actually, is my SENCO doing that? And to me, that should be quite an easy, actually, SEND isn't being that, okay. But then that first bit comes back to, well, have they been given the authority to? Because that's with you. That's with you as the head teacher to have I given my SENCO that authority?
Yeah.
And that's what I like about that phrase. It's not just a recommendation. It is pointing at, asking the head teacher to ask the question and then pointing out to them that it's their responsibility to give that authority.
Absolutely. The authority and the time and the space, you only have to look at feedback from any surveys out there at the moment on from SENCOs and how they currently feel in their roles, and also just the turnover of SENCOs in role currently. It's already a difficult job. So if we really want to make the change, if head teachers really want to make the changes within their school, then they have to give their SENCOs the time to do so as well as the authority. Now that comes with big issues in terms of budget, and I appreciate, again, many pulls on people's budgets and time, but that is such an important part. I've done that role, I've been there, I've been the deputy and the SENCO at the same time, and it's a difficult job to juggle. And it can't just be SENCO sitting in a room filling in lots and lots of individual learning plans and filling in EHCP paperwork. In a way, it almost has two strings to the role now, doesn't it? It has the strategic role and the administrative side as well. There's food for thought about how that could be managed.
And again, just coming back to that idea about that authority, it's not necessarily about the SENCO always delivering the information.
No.
It's them contributing to the English lead and the maths lead it so that when that English lead is going, we're going to be doing this, you then don't have the SENCO standing up 6 weeks later going, and we're not doing that for us, and we're doing something completely different. Or what they're saying goes against what the English lead is saying, and they're sort of going, well, hang on, who do I listen to?
Yeah.
It needs to be a continual inclusion by design for every leader.
Absolutely. And it comes back to, SEND is everybody's issue, everybody's responsibility, not issue, actually, responsibility. Inclusion is everybody's responsibility, I would say. One of the things, an example of something I introduced in my previous role was we completely changed our monitoring pro forma. So our monitoring pro forma that we used for everything, all the joys of the work trawls, learning walks, dropping lesson observations, we use the same pro forma. And sometimes that would be me observing in my role as deputy or in my role as inclusion lead. Sometimes it would be the head teacher. Sometimes it would be subject leads. And we included a section specifically for inclusion. So we put the 3 Ps on there: participation, presence and progress, so that they were looking out for examples of inclusive practices to include those 3 Ps. And we also added in, I'm going to try, I won't remember all of the Rs, but it was things like how in this lesson has or how in this book is there evidence of developing resilience? How is there evidence of adapted resources? How is there evidence of relationships being built? I've given you 3 of the Rs. I think there were 8. So that it was encouraging subject leaders to take responsibility for conversations about SEND as well as the SENCO.
That's the thing is, again, when I hear things like that, I sometimes, like, the SENCO is doing the SENCO course and then the new one, and they're getting the training, but how much training around SEND do head teachers get? And that's one of the things is they're kind of managing someone whose role they don't understand. They don't necessarily always buy into some of the things the SENCO's saying. And the SENCO's going, we need to do this. And it's kind of and that's one of the things I think there should be more SEND training as part of that head teacher's qualification.
100%. Music to my ears. I mean, if they've been around in the education as long as I have, which is 26 years plus, their SEND training probably would have been I was fortunate. I did an education degree. My first degree was education. So I did a lot about child development. I did a lot about psychology of education. But my actual teacher training, my postgraduate certificate, I did half a day on SEND. So, I was fully equipped to enter the classroom. Now, that has improved. The ECT framework, SEND is woven throughout the ECT framework. Adaptive learning strategies are considered all the way through. That's your career, the teachers coming in, which is really positive, great. And obviously the MPQ SENCO, really practical. In fact, I did the NA SENCO, and I'd say the MPQ SENCO is even more practical in terms of support and strategies, and what might arrive on your doorstep and what you can do about it. Head teachers, I've been delighted actually. A number of the candidates on the MPQ SENCO course I'm doing at the moment are head teachers, and they have chosen to take themselves onto that training. Great, brilliant. But what if it was just part of the MPQH? Yes. It surely, with the direction of travel right now, surely it should just be part of that by default.
That's the thing, is again, going back to, you talked about there's 2 threads, there's the strategic and there's the admin. And I'm going to say the admin is the EHCP world. And when we talk about that initial teacher training or the early careers, there is this, as you said, adaptive and all that sort of stuff. But how often is the EHCPs? How much is that covered? How much is the fact that the day one, you're going to start in your school, you're going to be an NQT, and there's probably going to be 2 or 3 children in your class with an EHCP, off you go. And it's that, to me, is a whole other world that the teachers aren't prepared for. And I think the head teacher doesn't understand that legal responsibility fully. And there's on that kind of the admin side, again, there's not enough awareness. And the SENCO is trying to be strategic, trying to keep up with the mountain of paperwork and the fact that you have so many days to respond. And if it's in your holiday, it's a really demanding job. that no one else in the school really understands.
No, I agree. And I think some of those things can be improved by organizational activities. One of the first things I always used to do as a SENCO when I received as an EHCP is to pull out the key information that the class teachers would need and try and put it onto a one-page sheet. And that was no mean feat, but it meant that on day one they had like a one-page summary. Well, before day one, actually, that would start with transitions prior to the summer holidays, but so that they could just have an idea of, these are the outcomes. This is what this child is working towards. These are the strategies, and have it just on one page, because nobody has time to read more than one page.
Nope.
That's my theory. If it doesn't fit on a page of A4, which was tight sometimes, I can imagine some of my ex-colleagues watching this or listening to this now thinking, sometimes didn't quite make the one page, but I tried my best to get it onto one page.
Smaller and smaller and smaller until it did.
Yes, yeah. But teachers don't have time, but they want to do the right thing. I do also strongly believe, going back to, what is there as ordinarily available provision, much of what is in EHCPs currently can be, I'm not saying everything, there's an awful lot that are protected in law and important targets that we need to keep a very close eye on. But a large part of EHCPs can also be covered by what's available if we're planning for inclusion at the outset. Some things I've seen in EHCP documents, a visual timetable. Well, if you've just got a visual timetable in your classroom by default, that's step one. And then also that child's going to be more receptive to having their own individual noun next board. Those sort of things can be catered for through good universal provision. But that comes from training as well. And I am really passionate about making sure our workforce is skilled and ready to deliver everything that they need to be able to deliver, and that comes back to the training.
So it's interesting, you talk about the visual timetables, and I don't know, visuals seem to be frowned upon. It's sort of like, as soon as you get to a certain level, we can get rid of visuals, they're bad. Oh no, we don't want visuals. And I just find it really bonkers, because I'm holding up my phone, and you might be able to see it, and if you're listening, you definitely cannot see my phone. But my phone is my background with loads of icons on, with loads of colours. And I know exactly which colour combination is Facebook. I know exactly which shape and colour combination is YouTube. I'm not reading the text under it. I'm using the symbols. When I look at my calendar, I can see different people have different colours on my phone. I get blocks for how long something's going to last. Yeah. I get lots of simple visual information, so I don't have to read. Mm-hmm. And we spend our whole life using these symbols. Netflix has a logo, Amazon Prime has a logo, Disney Plus has a logo, you're not reading, you're looking at shapes, you're looking at symbols and using them.
Yep.
We do it all day to save time, to make stuff. When we go to what do we need to toilet, what do we look for? Hopefully quite a standard male-female sign so we can understand it, not some weird thing made out of shells where we're going, well, what one is that one?
Yeah, we've all been caught out by those, Dale.
We're generally we're not looking for the word toilet. We're looking for two symbols. Mm-hmm. Yet somehow, for some people, the moment they can read, we don't need any of that. And you're like, but we all use symbols.
Absolutely. And
all day, every day.
I would challenge you to drive to work tomorrow without them. Road signs are there. And if we didn't have road signs, can you imagine if you had to interpret the text every time you approach a roundabout and you're frantically trying to read the text? We have to have, and there's obviously numerous theories attached to this, one of which is the picture superiority effect. So the picture superiority effect shows that we process visuals much faster than we process words. Now, there are lots of figures attached to that, which are all a bit, some of which have become floated around, but actually the fact is it's different for everybody. Everybody's speed of processing is going to be slightly different. However, everybody does process visuals faster than words. We know that. And that's partly because, with text, you have to process it one word at a time to make sense of it, whereas you can process multiple symbols at the same time. If you see a visual, you don't just have a cognitive reaction. If I showed you a picture of a dog, you wouldn't just go, that is a dog. You'd have an emotional response as well, so you're more likely to remember it. And also it makes things concrete that can be abstract. So if I say to you right now, Dale, if I said the word cell, now I've got my idea of what cell means. Tell me what you're thinking when I'm telling you, saying the word cell.
Well, I'm in Excel.
You were in a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even think
I didn't go
way.
to a DAO cell. I didn't go to a plant cell or...
I wasn't thinking of that at all. I was trying to sell you something. So, you know, and that's just it, isn't it? All those things are abstract concepts. But if I tiled up a symbol to go with it, which had me handing money over, you would have known exactly which sort of cell I was meaning. So it makes those kind of abstract concepts concrete.
Yeah,
but also... Oh, sorry.
Can I just say, because there's a story. I went on a school trip with my daughter to the Land Rover factory, which is Solihull or somewhere.
Yeah, my husband works at Land Rover, so yes.
And it's an amazing... my daughter was bored. I was just in, this is so interesting. Because they've obviously got that conveyor belt of a line and the cars go along. And because people choose the wheels and the colours, that conveyor belt, the car arrives as the wheels arrive. So it's literally like the wheels that arrive are destined for that car. And this whole production line is just seamless. Mm-hmm. And to put the wheel, but they all use the same bolts, nice and simple. And they had part numbers. And you obviously don't pick one up, they're fed. So like a feed thing, which says like, next one, it's automatic. And what they found is people were reading the part numbers and misreading them, putting the wrong bolt in there, and then that whole feed, and it finally gets through to the gun doesn't work, won't go in. They have to stop the entire production line, empty out every single bolt, restock it. They lose like an hour or so. Mm-hmm. What they did is they got rid of the numbers and put shapes. Yep. Square bolt in the pick up a bag of square bag. Yep, with the square on, pour it down the square. Yep, done. Triangle in that one. They stopped having mistakes.
Yep.
Yes, we can all read numbers. Yes, but it's so much easier to match a triangle to a triangle and a square to a square.
Absolutely, and with you know, even fire evacuation procedures. You know, you will have the symbol, the green symbol, and then you'll be expected to follow those same colour arrows. Those things are part of our life. And an important part of our life. So, like you said, go into an airport, or go into a busy place, you're looking for things that are familiar. If they're in a different language, you're looking for things that are familiar, and that's going to be the symbols. And for children or anybody who has difficulty with text, that symbol's going to be their only access to the learning environment or an environment. I would also say when you're under times of stress as well, you know, we know when we're under stress, you know, your prefrontal cortex is not engaged, the thing that makes all that rational decision making, your amygdala's kicked in and panic ensues. But so you're not able to make sense of lots of text at that moment. So when you're dysregulated, you're looking for something that you can understand really quickly and easily. And that's where symbols come in as well. But I would also argue, and we've got a saying here at Widgit, which is essential for some, beneficial for all. And the benefits of using visuals cannot be underestimated. There's lots of research about dual coding, for example, that shows that we've got one channel in our brain that processes visuals, one channel that processes verbal information like text or instructions. And when you have the two operating together, you're more likely to retain that information. So symbols can be used really effectively just for everybody for knowledge retention. You know, we used to do pre-teaching of vocabulary to everybody, to the whole class. So it just levels the playing field for everybody. They all understand the vocabulary that we're going to be using in the next lesson. And they're more likely to retain it if they've had it as a visual and as a text as well, because it's using both parts of the brain.
I could go to our local hospital, the corridors are different colours.
Yeah. So
you go to a department and someone go, oh yeah, it's this department. There'll be some long random word. It's on the red corridor. So the first thing you're looking for is red. Before you even get to the long word, I'm looking for red. If I'm on yellow, I'm not here. Red, oh, there's red. I walk to the red bit. Now I'm looking for that word. It's already narrowed, like got rid of 80% of that hospital. I'm narrowing down my search with just looking for a certain colour. Car parks are often different colours, different levels. Yeah. What colour? Green. I'm in the green zone. we're not counting cars. We're just getting us in a rough ballpark with the most limited brain power needed.
Absolutely. I mean, even better if that hospital had a symbol to represent each wing of the hospital or each unit. And that, we're doing a lot of work here at Widgit with organisations actually at the moment who are becoming symbol-friendly organisations, which is fantastic. So you've got situations like if you were taking a trip to a safari park, you would be able to take a train journey. We're working with a number of stations as well, and some of them have already gone through and have been successful and are already symbol-friendly, where you could plan your whole journey with your child that would be symbol-friendly. So they would know how, even purchasing a ticket, there will be symbols to support. The whole journey can have a social story attached to it, so they know what to expect. And then when they arrive at the safari park, lo and behold, those symbols are there as well. And Widgit symbols are in, the majority of primary schools already, and many other schools too. So having that consistent symbol set from the classroom to their journeys, to the outside world, to the environment, isn't that just the dream? Isn't that just the best practice for everybody?
And I think coming back to that strategic role of the SENCO is, as you said, that universal provision.
And you've got to be there at the procurement stage. And if you're not there at procurement stage and thinking strategically across the whole school.
But signage around the school, all those sorts of decisions, SEND should be involved everywhere, because you said requirements, some benefit, or essential for some, beneficial for all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not a case of you doing it in the classrooms. It is everywhere. It should be kind of, if inclusion goes well, kind of certain phrases we can get rid of because it's not needed, because everyone is accepted for who they are. We don't have to have this label for this and that label for that. Everyone just gets included. But while we're on that journey, we do have to use that. But I think the aim is that everyone should be thinking, what am I doing for everyone? Or what about them? They struggle with this. I can do that instead.
Yeah.
Whereas
absolutely.
sometimes it's, we're going to go on a school trip, blah, 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 blah. Oh, they can't access that. Okay. They never said anything, let's change the trip.
And I think sometimes we think about the physical aspects of disability, perhaps, and we're thinking about, access to a building in terms of ramps, in terms of lifts, in terms of, things to make it more physically accessible. But what about emotionally accessible? What about from a sensory perspective accessible? What about, children who might feel overwhelmed by too much information? I think we're all overwhelmed by too much information. So how can we highlight the key information? I only started at Widgit in September of last year. And of course, our kitchen areas are fully symbolised. You would expect nothing less. Which means that I was able to make myself a cup of coffee, knew where the coffee was, knew where the sugar was, knew where the tea towel was instantly, because it's all labelled, which was absolutely wonderful. I didn't spend ages opening every cupboard and but it was a massive help. And one of the things, exactly as you said, wayfinding, signage, labelling, we're providing lots and lots of advice and guidance here at Widgit about how you can become symbol friendly, not just as organisations, but also as schools. So we've had our first trial runs of our symbol-friendly schools go through so far, and they have got all of their labelling, all of the wayfinding is all fully symbolised, because it just helps everybody. It
does. And it's one of those things, and again, being neurodivergent, my daughter, is that certainty aspect. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about being emotionally safe and that, it's like, what am I going to see when I get there?
Totally.
Yeah. So even with journeys, what's the train going to look like? What are the seats like? What's the train station going to be like? It's going to be rainy. Is there cover? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just all, and even for people I work with, that idea of where am I going? What am I going to expect?
Absolutely. It's like a visual timetable is standard, in a classroom, as far as I'm concerned, because if you can reduce anxiety for somebody, then why not do it? It's not going to make it worse for anybody. It can only make it better. And, as teachers, we go into a classroom all the time. We had a rough, I can't say you always knew exactly what was going to happen through the course of a day, but you did have a plan for the day and you knew roughly what was going to happen. Did the children going into your classroom know that? Well, if they have a visual timetable, they do. So, in the best classrooms I've ever been, and it's when the children shout at the teacher and go, it still says maths and it's English now. And then you know that that's used really well in that classroom, and the teacher's not just got it up there for decoration, it's actually used and embedded.
But even my daughters at secondary school, they get their timetable, which they drew out on paper. And then they would colour code. So maths was red and English was green and geography was purple, which meant they could just, without a glance, they just knew, oh yeah, I've got English. They're not reading the words, they're looking at the colours. When my daughter with her exams, I printed a thing out which colour coded. So she knew when the Spanish exams were, she knew where her psychology exams were. And we could actually say, hey, you finish your science, you're never going to do science ever again. You finish Spanish, you never do. And it was just, without reading it, we could look at the colours.
Yeah.
And we do this so much. We do this as adults. And I do kind of, and again, part of it, I think, is this excelling. We don't need this. We have this, and it's like overcomplicating things to show that people can. Just keep it simple. Absolutely. Just keep life simple. There's enough going on that's complicated enough. And again, if we come back to that strategic and the send and the reforms, if we go into the world of inclusion bases, or whatever they're called this week, the idea of you don't want that inclusion base to be a separate thing where everything is send friendly there, and to thrive in the rest of the school, you have to deal with it the way it is. Actually, I'm going to say the inclusion base should be leaking provision. It should be leaking things into the rest of the school.
Totally.
Actually, it works in the provision. It's going to leak out and be adapted elsewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things I hope, and it's ensuring that inclusion bases are used as supportive interventions, not places where pupils become separated from school life. That shouldn't be what an inclusion base should be. It should be integral, as you said, integrated into school life, and best practice examples from those inclusion bases should follow through. So, there's no point, and from our perspective, there's no point having beautiful visuals used really effectively as scaffolds and as to support with accessibility in the inclusion base if that isn't followed through in the classroom. It has to be followed through into the classrooms. So great, if best practice does leak from the inclusion base, is brilliant. I had the most wonderful nurture lead in my previous school. We worked together to set up a nurture space that was, I'm not going to lie, it was outstanding. I was so proud of it. And because of her. But one of the things that she did so effectively was when a child had their nurture intervention, she was very clear that time in nurture was an intervention. She supported the class teachers as they were integrated back into the classroom by giving them the strategies that she had used. She used to produce little postcards with 3 key strategies that she'd used, 3 ways of changing the language slightly in a way that would be more acceptable to that child. And it was very much a working together process. So it wasn't just like the child was in nurture and then they went back into the classroom. It was all done as a gradual process, and the things that they'd learned in that group about themselves and about what the nurture lead had learned about that child was carried over back into the classroom. And that is when inclusion bases can work really, really effectively. There's a danger of them becoming exclusion bases, which would be just that's tragic.
Again, there's a lot of people talk about that, and I'm literally going, almost you got to talk about it. It's almost like that's what's going to go, that's the destination we're going to go down. To me, it is an inclusion base working well is not only do the children come in and out, but the staff come in and out.
Oh, yeah.
That class year 3 teacher, with that child's in the inclusion base because they're struggling, and goes in to see what that child is doing and what they're capable of there.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, so this child in the right environment can do all of this, but not doing any of it in your classroom.
Absolutely. But seeing and absolutely right. And that's the other thing we used to do is, free up the class teacher, which is almost like an exchange, which was possible to do, so they can actually see for themselves. I mean, I remember watching, I feel really bad because I'm not going to credit the person for this, but I went to a training event once and they showed a picture of Death Valley and said, this is Death Valley, and talked about how, nothing grows there, obviously, because of the climate. And then in a period of time, they had some flash flooding in Death Valley, and they had, just in a certain area, and where they had the flash flooding, flowers grew. And it just showed that actually Death Valley wasn't dead. The environment was wrong. And when the environment was adapted and changed, it grew and it came to light. And I just thought, what a lovely analogy for inclusion, that, it's not about the child, it's about the environment. And if the environment's right, people will thrive.
And what these inclusion bases could be is we have permission to do something different here.
Yes, to try things, to see.
Try things. Yeah, we're not going to risk damaging everyone. We're going to try it over there. Oh, and all the things we thought that would work have worked, and it's making a difference. Perhaps we should bring it out over here. What works for SEND works for all. Yeah. All those lovely phrases that we've known for years.
Yeah.
Is that often happens in a special school miles away.
Yeah.
One of the things that inclusion bases is when you see it happening in your school, when you see that child who would not engage or was always disruptive in your lessons, you go see them quietly doing their work and showing you what they've done. You're like, okay, there's something about this environment which is making this child excel.
Absolutely. And
what can I bring back to my classroom to keep this going?
Yeah. So, and it has to be, that needs time, that needs training, that needs expertise, and that needs resourcing. So again, coming back to who's making those decisions and why are we making them? So coming back to those leaders, really understanding the purpose of the inclusion base is going to be essential.
Yes. And it is. It's not a walled garden. It's not a large isolation booth. It's not a destination. It's where you do things differently to find out what works, and then you bring that back into the rest of the school. To me, that is what an inclusion base is about. If you're not going to change, send them somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then that's what's kind of happening. Whereas to me, this bringing it into the school is, again, it's like Ofsted not saying you have to put them on the seeded, but writing it in a certain way, which means the SENCOs really should be on the senior leadership team. I kind of feel that inclusion basis is saying, stop pushing these children out because they don't fit you. Work out how you fit them and you adapt.
Yeah.
But the problem is schools have been failing children for so long that the parents, it's going to take a long while to get the buy-in from the parents.
And, again, I think that can come back to having the right people in the right roles and having the right conversations. And it's almost saying, yes, it's acknowledging it, isn't it? I always think when anything goes wrong, the most important thing is to acknowledge it before you can start building. So there's no point pretending everything's been fine. We have to acknowledge that things have not been fine and what we do next. And some of the most effective SENCOs I know have three things. They have expertise, obviously, but they have empathy. And many have spent many days, weeks, months, years building trust with families and recognising that behind every sort of report, every referral, every EHCP is a child and a family who are probably navigating some challenges, some big challenges. So, the most effective SENCOs have both of those things. What they now need is that third thing, influence.
Yes.
So they need to have the influence to shape the system, shape the culture, and shape the decision making. So going back to those circles of influence that I spoke about at the beginning, but a lot of those SENCOs already have those empathetic relationships with families already that they can build on. So let's start listening to our families and let's start listening to our children about what they need and build from there. But, I don't want to dismiss all of the pressures that schools are under at the moment, and something somewhere has to give. And I think curriculum reforms are a great opportunity, and the way that we assess, it's a great opportunity to open those conversations for change.
I think I've written loads and also recorded episodes on the podcast about kind of the SEND reforms and the white paper, and I am optimistic, not cautiously. I am optimistic. The crucial bit is going to be next spring when that new curriculum is released, that will be the day my either optimism will stay or I will just throw it in the bin, because the curriculum, that's going to be the crucial thing. Reducing that curriculum, having time for the oracy, the critical thinking, all those sorts of things requires time, not a 20-minute oracy. It's time. And these skills that actually just slowing down the curriculum, building relationships, having those conversations, it was just so much there's so much resting on the curriculum review, that will be the day when that's released and I've read it, I would know we're going in the right direction, or it all sounds nice and they've chickened out.
Yeah. And I think, you can't keep adding things on to teachers. Yeah, I don't know anybody that went into teaching to be told exactly what they had to do, to not have to make any decision making, to earn lots of money, that's not what teachers go in for. Teachers went into teaching to make a difference. I don't know any teacher that didn't go into teaching to make a difference. And everybody wants to make a difference for all the children in their classroom. So the intention is there. The teachers, there's no teacher that goes and goes, I don't want to teach any of these kids today. Well, if they are thinking that, maybe they do need to sort of rethink their career choices. But they go in because they want to make a difference to all the children in the class in front of them. But they are under so many pressures. So those decisions about, well, I'd like to be able to spend more time with that child and find out more about what they need. And I'd like to be able to plan more inclusively and think about inclusive practice from the outset. But something has to be taken off. You can't keep piling things on top unless you take something away. So some really, really careful decision making about what we take off in order to enable our teachers, empower our teachers to become more inclusive by default. It's not that the intention isn't there.
No, it is. And that thing, I'm always that thing, no one intentionally goes into this world, but the pressure they're put under, and people say it's Ofsted. I don't think it's Ofsted. I would say the biggest issue for me is league tables.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's as well, budget. Budget comes down to bums on seats at the end of the day, and how you attract, more pupils into your school. And, all of that has such a massive impact, because you're constantly thinking about how can the school look the most attractive to anybody wanting to come and visit us. And it's such a shame. I don't think it was like that when I started teaching. I think it was much more, I don't know, maybe it was all much more straightforward.
We've got an interesting time ahead because you've got the falling birth rate.
Yeah.
What that actually means is parents may have a bit of choice. It's not just your local school is all you're getting. You might be able to choose, and then parents might actually vote on which are the best schools. Mm-hmm. So when you are going to be competing for pupils, because you're not all of you going to have your classes full, now you've got work to do. Now you've got to work out what is going to attract the children and the parents. And I think when we've had those boom years, you're going to be full no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. Now you're competing. Now schools are going to be going, we want those children, we want that money. How are they going to do that? How are they going to show they're going to do it? And that's going to be an interesting time. I think that's going to be another change that will impact schools.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah. And I mean, coming back to good SEND practice is good teaching. So how do we become a school where all children thrive? If that's central to your thinking all the time as a leadership team, that how can you go wrong? You have to articulate that message carefully and sensitively. But actually, if you're coming back to all the time, what do we do in this school to make sure that all children thrive? And I know it sounds very simplistic, but I think it is. You're coming back to what do we do to make sure that this is a place that values everybody and thinks about what every pupil needs in order to succeed.
Many years ago when I was governor, because I spent years going to different schools as Mr. B Squared, and I go in after the children have left, but I've learned how to judge a school with no children in. There are things you see where I can tell you if it's a good school or a bad school, even without any children in. I know you get so much more when the children are in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that a school which helps all children thrive,
Mm-hmm.
that helps every single child, feels more welcoming than a school which is academic.
Absolutely. That celebrates all the achievements.
And you see it, you know what that looks like. And I think those schools are going to be the ones which will stay full. And I think other ones are going to slowly empty and then work out what they're going to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes down to valuing everybody's talents, everybody's skills, offering, broad opportunities so that it isn't just about this narrowed curriculum, but it's about the whole experience of being at school for a pupil.
And it's about being ready for that next phase. That's a big thing. My daughter's primary school, they didn't get the best results. There was an academic school very, very nearby. They got the best results. But what the secondary school always said is that the children from my daughter's school always arrived more prepared for secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's an important difference.
Because they were thought about as a whole child. And I'm going to steal a friend of mine's comment. She always said that she wishes that teachers would, schools would think about teaching children, not lessons. And I love that phrase.
Definitely.
I will credit Andy Hillman with that one if she's listening.
Years ago, it was a phrase of, schools taught children, colleges and universities taught subjects.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing, is you taught the child, whereas at college and university you're delivering a course. And I do think in secondary it's changed more to teaching subjects rather than children. It's getting through the curriculum, thank you, Mr. Gove, rather than the teaching of the children. And I do hope with so many things we get back to teaching children. That'll be
and if that's how we can start judging schools, on how well they teach children, rather than how high the outcomes are because of lessons, I think the outcomes will improve anyway.
That's the thing. Without a doubt, they will. Because every child, I think, I'm not going to quote the research because I'll get it completely wrong. Every child wants to please. Every child wants to please their parents. They want that attention. They're needing it. They're seeking it. They want to impress their parents. They want to impress their teachers. That's like a natural child. To slowly destroy that, something's going wrong. And if you make that child happy, they're going to thrive. It's to me, it's the most obvious thing a happy child will achieve. A child who isn't getting their needs met will not achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes back to, doesn't it, looking at each child and how they can thrive.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm going to wrap it there.
Seems like a nice place.
It's always fun. It's always like, I just want to say that. There's a little bit I wanted to add in, but that will have to wait because we've already talked enough. So thank you for coming on the show today.
It's been a pleasure.
You are very welcome. As always, I will be sharing Lisa's contact details and links to find out all about Widgit and other work Lisa is doing. And you'll find the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the SENCO website. If you haven't subscribed already, click on that subscribe button and don't forget to follow us on the social medias. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on most of them. And if you're looking for a simple, secure way to capture and share evidence of learning, or a way to capture pupil voice, a way to celebrate and share achievements, or a simple way to communicate with parents, you need to have a look at EverSense. EverSense is our evidence system that does so much more to boost parental engagement. Remember, it's about a conversation. It's a two-way thing. To find out more about EverSense, visit the B-School website, and you can find out all about the software. Or if you look in the show notes, you'll also find a link to a meeting with me so I can take you through EverSense and answer any questions you have. And you'll find the links to the B-School website or that meeting link in the show notes. So for now, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.